To confirm, last time we went over Connect and we were focused on how the online bookings portal can be beneficial in terms of yourselves and interactions with your customers, along with the option to take a deposit and things like that. You'll notice today it's a little bit different as there has been a new look for our system. We've gone through and revamped quite a lot of the system in terms of the UI, just to try and make it look a bit nicer, easier to access, and just make navigation a little bit more streamlined. So I'll quickly go through that first and foremost. After that, we'll dive into the main topic, which is going through the automations. Now, the new look itself is pretty straightforward. You'll notice on the right-hand side, it hasn't changed too much. So there's nothing really beneficial to know about that aside from what you're already familiar with from the previous office hours. Obviously, things have been rounded to make it look a bit easier to on the eyes, I guess. But aside from that, it's relatively straightforward. The thing to note, however, is that some things have been moved around. So in the top right-hand corner, we used to have all the settings. In this case, we've removed that now and we've moved it to the bottom left, just so it's all on the same pane as everything else within the system. And we've changed it now where it's all drop downs. So contacts is split up now by customers and suppliers directly here. Same for your finances. You got your invoices, charges, debtors, payments, and expenses. Your reports, vehicles, job sheets, so on and so forth. And same for stock. It's all broken down. We decided on this based on feedback, on the basis of we're just trying to make things a lot easier to access and a lot tidier, so it's a lot more presentable when you're going through the system. I'm just trying to create a bit more color into the system, and personally, I quite like it. Now, regarding automations themselves, they are relatively straightforward. Obviously, we recommend doing automated reminders in general, just to have better communication with your customers without the need for the manual work. You can still do manual reminders before I get into it. If you still prefer to text or email your customers as and when you wish to, you're more than welcome to do so. But the automation is just help streamline that experience and just take time away from the admin as much as possible. Now, getting into the automations itself is relatively straightforward. If I were to go into my settings, I can go into my setup and I can go through the automations here. Now, before I get into that, on your communication section here, in your general, there is a way to initially enable whether it wants to be just emails or SMS or text. And you can customize that to some degree for the text side here, so text preferences. For me, I get all my emails go to my actual email address for any text response I've got, just so I can keep an eye on it and keep it on track. You can do it from a different actual number, or say, for example, it can be your garage instead of the actual number itself, completely up to you, and you can figure it however you want. Or it can be from an actual number. So if you link it up to your actual mobile number, for example, the response will go to your number. Now, as I scroll down, we've gone through this again already. You send email reminders and SMS reminders, and you can also receive notifications to confirm that they've been sent. So I get mine sent to email, so I can confirm that it's actually been sent out perfectly fine, or if there is any problems. I can then also go through automatic confirmations. There's things like bookings, cancellations, things like that, to make sure that your booking system itself is in order. And then as you scroll down, you can create the initial templates for these reminders. Now, going back to Connect, which we talked about last week, oh, not last week, like 2 weeks ago on the last office hour sessions, if you want to make use of Connect doing online bookings, for example, you can also have that connected here for booking confirmations as well. And there can be a separate communication to what you'd have internally from a normal booking. Main reason for this is if some customers may want to have provisional bookings come through where you are in control of it. You don't want people to book in as and when they please and they get messy and get out of control if you're quite a busy garage. This can be a simple text or an email to say, thank you for choosing to book with us. It is now with our reception team and we will call you if there's any issues, just to make sure that it's all in line as much as possible. And then you can also have things for finances, so you can send across an email receipt or an invoice automatically to help split that along as well. And these are based on documents that you can create. So one of the things I promoted before is the flexibility in your documents, and that's exactly the same for your reminders. So as an example, if I go into my documents here, I can go to my appointments, I can go into my booking confirmation reminder that I've set up, and I can have a look at what this has created. Now, this looks like jargon, as I'm sure, to a lot of people, but what it's doing is it's looking at merge fields within the system that it's pulling data from. So as an example, I've got customer title and customer surname, which would be Mr. Greenwood, for example, in my case. It just looks at that data to make sure when it's sending out a text or that email, it is bespoke to that specific customer based on the information you've got in the system. And this is why we always recommend to capture as much information as possible, so it's as relevant and as accurate as possible for that customer. Going to the actual automations themselves then, one of the things I quite like about this is that you can set it up as a workflow. So as an example, if I go into my automations here, I've got these rules. There's a few that's created already. So if I were to look at my booking confirmation, for example, real quick, what you can see is I've got an event from when an appointment is booked, and it's a first appointment, for example, as a condition I've set up. I'm going to send a text to confirm this booking and create a task within the system. You can also do it based on follow-ups, where if you've got a customer booked in for in 2 weeks' time, if you haven't actually, or so let's say an MOT should say, if you've got an MOT due in 2 weeks and they haven't booked in with you already, and the system can check to see if they've actually got a booking in. If they have, they will ignore it. If they do not have a booking, that's when it can target them. And the way you do that is if I create an automation here, I can say this is for an MOT reminder. Just say 30 days before. I can choose when a vehicle needs a reminder for MOT. Again, something to note about the recalls. These are all fully customizable in your system. You can have as many reminders as you want, and you can choose which reminder this is associated to. So I can say when an MOT is due 30 days after the fact, and they have no future appointments. I can create an action to say, send an SMS. I can choose a template, so MOT due reminder, run immediately. I can then add another action to do an email. I can say I'm going to target this specific customer or the specific email address if relevant, if you've got multiple email addresses for the customer. Also send immediately. You can then create follow-ups as well on this point, where you can target it a week after, another week after, so on and so forth. But in this case, I'm just going to click save. And that's automatically created. Now, something that's really important to note about this entire thing is that it's based on the GDPR consent you have for your customers. It's important to log that for obvious reasons, but you would just go into your contact itself. So if I go into a customer here, for example, I can load up a customer. And on here, I can go onto edit details, scroll down, and you've got your consent details right here. So you can confirm the customer's happy to it, and you can choose how they want to be contacted, whether it's by email, text, or phone. And you can also enable the text notifications if you want. So I can update that, make sure the information is correct, and that customer will then be on that track to receive a reminder should you wish to. And obviously, you can do this per customer. You can also break it down based on the vehicle itself, where if I go into a vehicle here, let's say we've got this one here, I can go into reminders here. I can choose the reminder dates. So I can do a next MOT due date to make sure that's up to date, see all the reminders, and choose if they want to receive it for the specific vehicle and save that as well. Another thing to note regarding the automations is that it doesn't have to be just for booking confirmations or MOT or service reminders. You can also do it for a few other things in the system. For example, if I add a new one here, I can do, let's say, when an appointment is cancelled, you can then do a chase up to say, understand you want to cancel, get in touch so we can reschedule, for example. And I can add a condition to based on if they haven't already done it to make sure there's another plan in place so you can actually get that revenue coming in a different way. Aside from that, just going back to the documents itself, you can have as many as you want. And then you would just choose a template based on whatever is more relevant. So if you want to be more bespoke, where 30 days before you send just a general message, and then 2 weeks before you want to put a bit more urgency on it because you still haven't received anything, you want to make sure they're getting sorted out, you have the flexibility to do so, and it's incredibly easy to create. I would just do add new appointments template, follow up MOT 14 days. I want to do it as a text, and I would just create this. Then I can say, hello. I'm not the most creative, I'll be honest. If I do hello, full name or title, surname, your vehicle, we can go into vehicle. Let's do vehicle registration. I am blind, I do apologize. Registration number is due for an MOT on X date. Then I would just save that, and that would just work as intended, and it would just be automatic based on the settings you've already set up. So you don't have to worry about going through and setting up each individual one. It'll be based on all the other triggers that you set up, and it would just be good to go based on the templates that you've set. This is very straightforward, very quick and easy. Once it's set up, you're just good to go. You don't have to worry about in the future having to go back in and make sure it's going out correctly. It would just do it automatically. I do recommend getting a send notice, send notification via email, like I mentioned before, just so you've got a record of that. And that would just go through to the customer's phone, the email, however you've set it up. Aside from that, I think that's relatively it. So it's pretty straightforward. If there are any questions, please do let me know. You can open up the forum for a few conversations if you wish, or if you have any questions. Okay, if there's no questions, that's no problem whatsoever. As usual, we typically do these every 2 weeks anyway. If there are any questions that come up after this, please do feel free to reach out as usual. So you can obviously drop us an email, you can give us a call. We can schedule one-on-one demos to go through things in more detail. And just feel free to reach out. Happy to assist. With that in mind, we will wrap this up here. There's a few more changes coming to GDS, which we'll talk about more on next office hours when we have it available. But with that, everyone have a good rest of the day, and I look forward to catching up with you guys again. Thank you.